that we listen to her first, and then we can give our compliments, and also we can ask questions a little later. Now that we are 20 minutes into our time, allow me to quickly give reminders of where we started from. You must be remembering that on the 24th of April, we had a conversation on data protection, and that is the time we started having, webinars around the personal data protection, and we're looking at the Personal Data Protection Act, which we tried as much as we could to actually talk about extensively by the council from Personal Data Protection Office. And we exhausted a number of things. We looked at what personal data protection means. We looked at what personal data actually is. We went on to look at data subjects, what that means, who are the data collectors, who are the data processors, who are the third parties in the data collection and also usage. We looked at how best we can protect ourselves from data concerns. And also we dived into data subject rights. So it was quite extensive that we were able to look at a number of aspects. And now we are going to listen in from Thyre, looking at other elements regarding data protection, but specifically looking at the media. You as the media personnel, what are the data protection issues that you need to take concern of? What are those data protection aspects that you need to put into consideration as a media personnel or your media houses? And ladies and gentlemen, let us put our hands together and welcome Thyre Gloria to share with us. Thank you, Gloria, and kindly come on board and share with us. Henry, I hope Gloria is able to share her screen. Maybe you give her rights if she's not yet. Thank you, and you're welcome, Gloria.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bernard, for that warm welcome. And thank you, everyone, for joining onto the call. I will be the one sharing with you today about data protection and the media. Let me share my screen so that you can be able to start.
Gloria, we can't hear you. Please go on.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon to all of us on the call. My name is Thyre Gloria. I work in the Personal Data Protection Office as a legal officer and licensing and legal affairs. Yeah, and today I'll be taking you through data protection, especially when it comes to media. So our presentation outline will talk about overview of the Act and its relevance, compliance obligations for media organizations, consequences, and then we'll have a Q&A. I believe this will be able to help us have an interactive engagement. So when I start with the legal framework governing media, I understand that the media and the press get their right, the freedom of expression from Article 29 of the Constitution. However, the right to freedom of expression does not prohibit members of the press and the media to respect privacy of an individual or giving out false information. So we can all agree that even before the Privacy Act comes in, as the media, the Press and Journalist Act, Chapter 100, tells us that other laws, that the right to publish does not absolve any person from complying with any law prohibiting any publication which improperly violates one's privacy. And then beyond that, when you go ahead in the Media and Journalists Act, there's a professional code of ethics for journalists and editors. And this one This one talks about gives a number of gives a number of gives a number gives a number of gives a number of rights of obligations to professionals. Now you see that journalists and editors are supposed to respect the right to privacy when it comes to people's homes, correspondences, communications, and all the others enshrined in the Constitution. So, a journalist, you can't go ahead and photograph someone who is in their private space without their consent. And then the code also talks about a journalist not unlawfully searching or getting to someone's home or their property of that person without their consent. Then also, when we talk about a private place, which is not a public place, it talks about when I'm in my private space as an individual, I need to have a reasonable expectation of privacy. Are you able to see my screen?
We are able to see your screen, but you had gone silent a little bit. But we can hear you now if you speak. So, Gloria, you have to unmute for you to be able to speak. Your microphone is muted, but we can see your screen.
Okay, all right. You can hear me now?
Yes, please.
All right. So I was speaking about the professional code of ethics for journalists. It's about how they have to respect constitutional right to privacy of homes, community and correspondences, and then not photograph people in private places, and then not unlawfully search a person or enter into premises of a person without their consent. And a private place is a public or private property where there is a reasonable extension of privacy. That can always be, and that it can be discussed. So this is a background of where privacy comes in when it comes to media. As we can see that even the media laws already provide for privacy provisions in the Professional Code of Conduct and also generally in the law. So now the Data Protection Act comes in to enforce privacy and give specifics and give further guidelines when it comes to privacy. And like we had previously shared, that the Data Protection and Privacy Act that was put in place in 2019 came from the Constitution and Article 27, which provides for the right to privacy, but it's not comprehensive enough. That's why the Act had to come in and give clear guidelines and give a further and a bigger picture when it comes to data protection. So like this law covers bodies, individuals that use Ugandans' personal data. So if you are a media person, maybe you're a writer or you're a publisher, you collect personal information. If you're an institution, you're a media organization, processing and collecting personal information in Uganda, this act applies to you. And then material scope, it applies to both automated and automated means that data is part of a filing system. So this means that it applies to both hard copy, it applies to electronic copies of data. It could be a newspaper, it could be a post on social media, everything. As long as it's in those two forms, it's covered by the Act. So when it comes to media, we see personal data coming up in newspapers, in posters, in banners, audiovisual and recorded media, electronic media published for public consumption. This is from the definitions that we had previously to do with personal information. That's why we usually see it. It could be a person's name, it could be their age, their telephone number, their location, and the like. So I want us to look at this document that I've shared on the screen, and then you can unmute or share in the chat what you think is wrong with this document. As a media person, what would you advise when it comes to data protection? What do you think is missing or is in excess? Yeah, you can unmute and share.
We can be able to share in the chat just
Yeah, you can.
to avoid every one of us speak. So colleagues, you could look at that and then you share in the chat.
When you look at it, the information that is given, do you think it's okay, it can pass, or do you think if you are a person who is private data privacy sensitive, what do you think you'd find wrong with this document? Okay. I don't think I'm getting any answers from the chat. So I think I'll go ahead and yeah. So when we look at this document, it's giving us candidates that have been successfully shortlisted for interviews. So we see that it's giving us for DPP scale, the scale is U4. So it gives us the full names of the individuals and then it also gives us their numbers. Okay. Doreen says that she thinks that the document is okay since it does not involve their contacts and place of residence. Let's see if there's anyone else.
There are other responses in the chat. Just in case you're able to look at the responses in the chat.
I see it's disclosing names instead of only index numbers. Yeah. I think the ID numbers were anonymous. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for contributing. So, as rightly stated, the document discloses names and the index numbers. So what from my understanding and everyone, imagine we're applying for a job with DPP and your name and the interview ID number is shared in the newspapers. And then probably your employer at the moment lands on it. It would prejudice you in a way or affect your relationship even with your employer. So ideally, if there are interview ID numbers, those would be sufficient, and names would have to be left out for the protection of the person who is applying. Yeah. Because imagine you're an employer and you see like 5 of your staff have applied for different jobs. And so you get to know, and then like the environment changes, the attitude might change. Yeah. So if I were a media person publishing this, I would leave out the names of the individuals who applied for these jobs. And because the numbers are there and everyone has an interview ID number, and they know if they get the newspaper or get to see it on a post on the page of the media house, they're able to know that this number 2501 is mine. So that would be sufficient. Then I have another document that I would like us to look at and examine together as people who are data privacy sensitive. You can still share in the chat what you think is wrong with the document. I could actually maybe read it so that we are able to go through it together. So this is a press statement of a patient. Their name is there, who is a husband to someone, and then the press release says that we learned with sorrow of the passing of Kakoza JB from a video that is running on different social media fora. We condole with the family. And the late Kakoza, under our care from 9th April 2025 to May this period, received treatment for various ailments. Then the above named now deceased was a 71-year-old male Ugandan admitted in the private ward of Mulago National Referral Hospital, 6B, the ward number, on 9th April 25, referred from Sandia Hospital. So far, do you think there's anything wrong with this publication? You can tell me in the chat, or maybe can we continue and have a conversation after? Okay. Yeah, someone says displaying the past patient's data was wrongfully was wrong, surely. Yeah, I agree with you. Any other opinions? Okay, I'll just continue as the opinions come in. So then they go ahead and now tell us that the deceased had multiple illnesses and diminished levels of consciousness for one day, which was preceded by 3 days of refusing to eat. And you can tell me in the chat if all this was necessary information. Then we go ahead and see the clinical expert review that talks about how they managed, what treatment the patient was given, on what date, how they were feeding. And then they go ahead. I think I'm going to go to the next page. I believe we're all done with this one. Yeah. Then they go ahead and give details of how before they left the hospital, they were conscious, and all those details really. Maybe you could share what you think about all this information. As a person who is sensitive to privacy, if you were the one in charge for giving out a press release at a hospital or in your organization, is this something you would actually go ahead and report on? Yeah. Thank you very much, Bernard. Bernard says that this report there was a lot of insensitivity in the reporting, unless the family explicitly agreed to that. Yeah. So now this takes us to our next conversation when it comes to data privacy. So I'll continue. Okay. So now I want us to examine that document on the principles of data protection and privacy. I understand that previously this had been discussed and explained to the members, but now when you look at the 7 principles, because all the scenarios that we have when it comes to data protection are hinged around these 7 principles. These 7 principles are the heartbeat of data protection. In any case scenario, when you assess it based on the principles, you're able to see whether you are complying with the principles or whether you are away from the principles. When you look at accountability, let's say, for example, if this is a patient, you have to be accountable to patients for data collected, processed, used, or held in a facility. And now, in this scenario, let's say it's the hospital, they went and processed information, gave treatment to the person, and went ahead and did a media release giving all that information, which I don't think they got any consent from the patient and even to share, because this is now sensitive information, this is health information, shouldn't be shared by everyone. That collection, if they collected information, was it lawful? And now when you take it back to media context, if you're collecting information, if you may be photographing an event or in whatever scenario that you're in, you have to endeavor that when you're collecting this information, you're collecting it lawfully. And then the other is minimality. You don't want to collect more than you need. Probably they could have just said they didn't have to give an announcement in the first place. In the first place of them sharing, they are breaching minimality. The minimality, there's no purpose for this document. When it comes to retention, you're collecting information as media, you have to know how long you're going to retain this information. If someone else comes later, how are you going to explain to, should be able to explain to someone how you keep the information when you collect it. Then quality, it should be quality, get accurate information when you're reporting. And when you're maybe taking pictures of people, it should be transparent with them and let them know why you're collecting this information, and also have security measures. Previously, we also talked about rights of data subjects. It's good to remind ourselves, because this is where compliance is hinged when we're coming to enforce their rights. The right to be informed, the right to have access to information, to rectify and to prevent further processing from marketing, and the right to delete. These were discussed previously, so I don't think I'll go deep into them unless there are questions around them. So when it comes to compliance obligations for media organizations and journalists, to be our next segment, but I see some other information in the chat. Someone talks about, Raphael talks about medical ethics and standards. Doreen says the details displayed were too much, interfering someone's privacy, isn't allowed even writing a health story. That's true. Personally, the illness of the late, not to be put in public. Yeah, that you're right. Then people who share photos of the corpse responsibly. Yeah, all that is really sensitive and shouldn't be shared. There's no reason for sharing. There is no purpose. So you don't just share information without a purpose. Okay. All right. So now when it comes to compliance and media organizations, usually the first part is registering with PDPO. And like we discussed, when your registration, we register data controllers, data processors, and data collectors. So as a media house, if you collect information, and even as a media house, even aside the work you do, you have staff who you onboard and collect information from. So all this is personal information, covering staff, covering the people you cover, the stories you cover, and everything. So when it comes to compliance, the first step is registering. And when it comes to registering with PDPO, it's done on the website. We have our website, pdpo.go.ug. So when you get to the website, first of all, you're able to create an account. And after creating an account, you're able to proceed to company registration. And then there's a form that you fill. Once you're done filling the form, you're able to, the details that you fill in especially have to do with the name of the entity, the data protection officer for the organization, and then the fee is 100,000. So upon payment of this fee, and then we go through the application and review it, we issue a certificate, which usually is 1 year. And then after 1 year, you go ahead and renew the certificate. That's the first step when it comes to compliance. And then once you've registered, it doesn't mean that you're compliant, that you've stopped there. Most people think that once they're registered, that's all they have to do. But we have to understand that compliance is a journey, and it goes beyond just registering the organization. Beyond registration, there are other things that you have to do as an organization, best practices, and also other mechanisms you put in place because you handle people's personal information. So the other step, once you're registered, you should designate a data protection officer. Now, the data protection officer, if you're a big corporation or a big organization, it can be a role on its own. However, we understand that most times organizations don't have that much capacity. So this role can be designated to someone beyond having their role. Let's say if I'm an editor in an organization, I can also take on the role of a data protection officer as a designated officer. So now this role is supposed to be a formal appointment. So beyond the when you have a job description, it should be added to the job description of the officer that has been designated to take on the role. And then once this person is appointed as a DPO, we're able to see the their roles have to be defined in the job description and also in the organization policies and contracts. Then when it comes to leadership in the organization and where the DPO is involved, is that there should be a formal communication with the DPO appointment internally and externally. When you have an organization, everyone in the organization should know the DPO because the DPO becomes the contact person for the organization and the personal data protection office. When we are sending out communication, we communicate to the organization through the DPO. And the DPO, their phone numbers, usually when you're registering, you give us their phone numbers and their email addresses, where we're able to directly reach them. And it should be the same to people externally and internally. So all staff should know in case they have any data issues, who are they reporting to and how are they reporting to them. So these all appear in the policies. And so we recommend, it's good practice that the DPO, it's actually under the law that the DPO's office should be independent. And in this, they don't receive instructions from the controller when they're performing their duties. And also, when they are reporting, they only report directly to the organization's highest level of management, the board or the executive director. And this helps, it ensures that the risks are visible at the top level and it prevents interference from lower levels. So this is majorly what a data protection officer does and why they should be independent and why they should report to the highest level of management. Yeah. So then the other, we're going to cover the lawful basis for collecting and processing. So as journalists and media, when we're collecting information, when we're getting stories, when it comes to data protection, you're required to have consent of a data subject. And consent of a data subject, I'll further on elaborate on that. And then the second one, you must be, if you're to get information where you don't have consent, you should be in compliance with a legal obligation. Or you have a contract with the person. Usually contracts come in, for example, nowadays we have influencers, and you find that you maybe had an influencer to maybe do marketing for you. So and you have a contract with them. So by contract, you are processing their personal information based on the contract. Yeah. And then maybe when you don't have consent, it could also be for national security, or you have a legitimate interest. The legitimate interest can come in, for example, where you have CCTV cameras around the building for security. You're monitoring people, but with a legitimate interest of security. Yeah. So when it comes to consent is freely given, it's specific, it's informed, and it's unambiguous. Yeah. The law clearly clearly describes consent and what it should entail. Specific, informed, unambiguous, and by a statement or by a clear affirmative action. And there's also when it comes to consent, the exceptions are also very clear under the law. But where you don't have to seek consent is where you're authorized by law to maybe collect information without consent. For example, NERA, which holds all our personal information, is authorized by law, or performance of a public duty, national security, or you're preventing, detecting, investigating, prosecution or punishment of an offense or breach of law for medical purposes for compliance with the legal obligation the controller is subject. So the only exceptions where you can collect information without consent is where you're authorized by law, you're performing a public duty, and for national security. And the case study usually we refer to is Nalubega Shadia versus Starbucks International. Nalubega, who was an employee of Starbucks, Starbucks takes pictures for marketing, and Shadia's is taken. When she leaves Starbucks, they continue using her picture. When she leaves, she communicates to Starbucks that she's not interested in them having her picture for their marketing, and they do not withdraw the picture from their billboards. So in that, her rights were breached and Starbucks was held liable. So you don't want to be in a situation where someone wants to withdraw their consent and they're unable to withdraw the consent. So then now when you go to children are very sensitive and vulnerable. So the law provides clear provision when it comes to children's rights, and that when it comes to children, you're supposed to only process personal data related to children only with the consent of their parents, or it's necessary to comply with the law, or if it's for research, that's for purposes. I believe you've seen incidences where maybe results come out, PLE, USCE, and then schools rush to post students who have performed very well, their pictures, their results, all that. And usually it's not the consent of the parents, but the law is clear that when you're publishing information to do with children, that parents should have consented on behalf of the children. Because why this is very harmful, if maybe they've published top performers and the person who has not even been published might feel bad, or even sometimes it creates stigma. And you've seen some students who even go ahead and commit suicide just because maybe they did perform well and the information has actually been shared. So children are very sensitive and they're protected at a higher standard when it comes to data protection. And so how do you handle the data when you're reporting or when you're publishing and the like? So instances where you believe that some individuals, if you may be covering a story on a particular subject, and maybe you take a general picture where you believe that some people don't really have to be in this picture. There's no purpose why they should be there, or you might be infringing on their privacy. You could blur out the individuals in the post or in the image. Then you could also adopt using pseudonyms where you feel that the identity of the person might bring them stigma or affect them negatively. You can pseudonymize, and maybe if she's called Gloria, call her Rita, and then usually newspapers will say Rita, not real name. Yeah, that protects the person's identity. Or you remove identifying details, or you obscure third parties. Yeah. So generally, the compliance obligations for media houses and journalists is registration with the Personal Data Protection Office. That's number one. Secondly, you have to establish a privacy governance structure. That would include having a data protection officer and also having staff know about data protection and be involved in, like, everyone gets to know what data protection is about, have senior management involved so that they know, because if senior management is not involved, it's difficult for maybe trainings to be done because maybe they need approval or maybe allocation of resources when it comes to maybe coming up with policies, which would require some management to approve. Then the other, you have to develop policies and procedures on data protection. So every organization ideally should have a data protection policy that talks about how data is handled in that organization. And data has a life cycle. So the policy gives how the information handles information in that life cycle. So the policy usually starts with what does the organization do? What's the purpose of the policy, which is usually for compliance. Then the policy will include what data is collected by the organization. Then it will include when this information is now collected, how do we process this information? How long do we retain this information? How do we store this information? For how long do we keep this information? Now that we've kept this information, how securely are we keeping this information? And then in case we don't need this information, how do we go ahead and dispose this information? The policy will also cover then how, if we are to share this information, how do we share this information safely? And do we have maybe data sharing agreements if we are sharing information with third parties and the like? And then maybe if there is a breach, how do we go about the breach? What are the reporting lines for the breach? And the police will also tell us who is the data protection officer to be contacted in this case. And then maybe also the review dates, because over time, things in the organization will change. The DPO could change, the data project could change, the retention periods could change. So you want to review that policy at least yearly to see that you update when things and activities in the organization change. And then you also, when it comes to compliance, you have to train employees on the developed policies. It's not enough for you to have policies in place if even the employees don't know about them. Then how are they going to be enforced? Because usually the breach will come from the employee, probably who leaves their computer open and someone can access it, or their laptop could be stolen and the like. And then the other compliance requirement is to report to PDPO and effectively manage any data breaches. So the requirement of the law is that when you have breaches in an organization, you should report them to PDPO, and also so we can do an investigation and see how to manage the breach. And then we also have a requirement to submit annual compliance reports within 90 days after the end of every financial year. This is a requirement under the law. Then also take steps to facilitate data to exercise their privacy rights. We talked about privacy rights, the right to be informed, the right to rectify, the right to be forgotten. But then how do data subjects exercise these rights? How are we supposed to exercise these rights? So you can have a data subject request form as an organization. For example, if I need to come and make any changes, if I'm staff maybe and I need to maybe update, I was maybe single and now I'm married, I need to update the database of the status. So there should be a data subject request form where information can be changed, can be to maintain the quality and the accuracy of the information. Then you also have to ensure that personal data is collected and processed in accordance with the law. That you're not getting into people's privacy and taking their pictures. For example, if I'm an MP and if I'm an MP, when I'm in public, I'm in parliament, you can take my picture, talk about it, but it would be it's not even in the code of the journalists, you don't go into someone's home and take their picture and maybe write about them without their consent. Then the other is you conduct due diligence before processing personal data outside of Uganda to ensure that the jurisdictions have equivalent protections. In case you have any data transfers outside of the country, you need to do adequacy assessments to see if their laws are similar or even better than our laws in Uganda. Those are the general compliance obligations that media houses and journalists have when it comes to data protection. So why should you go ahead and comply? It gives you when you are compliant, you have better data management. So you're able to know what you're holding, why you're holding it, how you're storing it, and how it is used. And then if I'm sure that a certain media house or certain journalist is compliant, I'm able to trust them. If maybe it means giving them information, I'm able to trust them because I know that it is secure in their hands. And even if a breach happens, I at least have the confidence that they had measures in place. They had measures in place. Yeah. Then the other relevance for compliance is that it's a competitive differentiator. It provides a competitive differentiator whose benefits vary from operational efficiency, investor appeal, and brand value. If I was an investor, you can argue that most investors want to know the compliance level of an organization before they invest their money. So that gives you brand value as an organization. And then also, most importantly, avoid potential fines and imprisonment. When there's misuse of data, there's disclosure or even sale of data, there are penalties under the law. So when you're compliant, you avoid these penalties. And these penalties don't just come to the organization, they also extend to staff. So the offenses under the law is if you fail to register with PDPO, that's an offense. If you're selling personal data, that's an offense because it's supposed to be selling personal data. That's an offense. If you're destroying, deleting, or altering personal data, that's also an offense. And then if you're disclosing or unlawfully obtaining personal data, that's an offense. If the office issues a notice, maybe we issue a notice to renew or to register or to make an explanation about a stand disclosure, and you don't comply, that also would be an offense. Giving false information while registering would also be an offense. Like some people, when they're registering, they might not give the proper information, maybe not give the correct phone number or even address of the organization. That's also an offense. And processing data without consent definitely also amounts to an offense. So the penalties for corporations can go up to 2% of the annual gross. And when it comes to an officer, you could be imprisoned if you knowingly maybe disclosed personal information or sold. Yeah. So generally, for an organization, tips for staff, you have to be aware, you have to accept that you are a target for cyber criminals. No one is safe. Everyone can be affected. Yes, you can put in place practices, you can put in place safeguards, but you have to be aware that it can be you at any time. You can be the one that is affected anytime. And then practice good password management. Don't share passwords. Don't use free Wi-Fi with caution. When you're browsing, make sure you're using a secure web. Keep your antivirus and malware protection updated. Beware of phishing scams. Don't leave your device unattended to. Lock your computer. Look at clean desk policy and maybe two-factor authentication. All these seem very easy and day to day, but do you really have them in practice, or do you just know them as safety measures and you don't even practice them? Yes, that's something to actually think about. This is my presentation, and in case you need maybe any further information, those are our numbers. That's the website. We're located at 7th floor, Padre Pio Building, Lumumba Avenue, Kampala. Yeah. Thank you very much. And I'll leave this here for any feedback that you have for us. Thank you very much. I think now I'll be taking questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gloria, for sharing with us extensively. Ladies and gentlemen, could we kindly offer her flowers as we've always done to appreciate her for her time, but also for sharing with us extensively. Let us offer her some flowers. Thank you, Ayebare. Thank you, Alimoka. Thank you, guys. Yes, thank you so much. Now we are going to take on a few questions. So while Gloria was presenting, I remembered something that I could... Gloria, you could first unshare your screen so that I can... okay, thank you. So while Gloria was sharing, I remembered something here. Let me just share my screen a little bit for a second. I just wanted to remind us of some basics. when it comes to data protection, the things that we seem not to imagine they are part of data protection. If you look at those images, let us maybe look at image number 1. This is someone's academic, not even transcript, but a certificate for the university. This one is a graduate with a second class upper, with his names there, with his university and his other details. And it is now a packaging material for mandazi, but that is someone's data there, someone's certificate. We have also seen people packaging medicines, for instance, in our past papers, in our packaging materials that have been made from people's records, someone's medical records or something. It could be your transcript, it could be your senior 4 certificate or something, and then we go and put medicine in there. I think you must have seen that. We've seen people using our data, documents with our data, to pack for us food. We've seen women packing maize or packing chapati or packing whatever they are packing, but they are packing it using our data, documents with our data, our personal data, your name, your age, your birth date, your contacts, etc. All of these are part of the violations, I think, of data protection. But then one also asked last time that, by the way, can an individual be able to report or maybe provide an intention to sue if someone is misusing data? And I came across this news bulletin on how over 100 data breach cases are reported. Now, who is reporting? There are people who have been affected by what Gloria has been sharing with us. So you have the ability, the mandate to actually report your case, because you're protected by law. If you just look at this other screenshot, a gentleman called Michael was able to sanction the Electoral Commission. That actually the Electoral Commission is collecting a lot of data, the registers, the data in the voters register, people who are contesting for parliamentary seats or whatever. Their data is being taken up, their dates, their names, their date of birth, their locations and their contacts, etc. But then he was raising a case that actually the Electoral Commission is not registered with the Office of Data Protection. So he was sanctioning the Electoral Commission. And if you look at that letter, he said if they cannot register, then he's willing to sue them. So the question is, how do we as individuals come to know this information and our rights and be able to actually take action against the entities that are misusing our data or that are picking data without meeting the requirements? So this is just to remind us that as we are telling the media these things, we would love that the media continues to share these aspects with the communities out there. Encourage people to report these cases. Encourage people to be able to, understand that there are issues of data protection that we must be dealing with at our individual level. But also organizations, civil society organizations, we are actually mandated to register with Data Protection Office. And already there is a circular that was given to us sanctioning all of us who are dealing with data, as long as you are civil society or non-government organizations. We are sent a reminder actually by the registrar that we need from the National Bureau for non-government organizations like NGO Bureau. There's already a reminder to us that we need to comply with this act, the Data Protection and Privacy Act. So there are no civil society organizations or NGOs that actually are exempted as long as they are collecting data. Now the question is, from the media perspective, are our media houses compliant? Maybe we could have a discussion on NGOs that you're working with or NGOs in your communities collecting a lot of data. Are they compliant with this regulation? How do we help people to know this kind of information? And that's why we're here. That's why we're bringing you experts from the office, Data Protection Office, to share with us extensively, but I will keep reminding you from our perspective. How do we make sure that this information reaches out to our media house bosses, to the NGOs, to the civil society actors, to the churches? Even churches are collecting a lot of data. They are baptizing our children, they are picking our data, but are they compliant? So these are some of the things that we need to bring to the community out there to make sure that we actually add value to the communities we serve. I have tried to show you some of the examples. These are our partners that we've been working with. Of course, consent. Of course, for us, we are registered and we keep renewing our permit with the data protection, because we are collecting a lot of data from you every time, and then you're registering with us. And as you might have seen for the last many webinars we've had together, we don't share your data with anybody, and because we are protected by this certificate that we have of registration. But also we've assured that our member organizations, people that we are giving some resources and we understand that they may do data collection, they also comply. If you look at this entity, GEDA, is one of our partners, but they are doing data collection on numerous things. They also had to comply for us to be able to give them this kind of work, just to make sure that us and those we are working with are actually compliant. We make sure that we keep promoting other entities to do the same. So likewise, on your side as media personnel, we want to urge you, now that you have this information, we've taken you through this information, we have one more session that is coming on data breaches and the penalties and all that. You can be able then to support us to escalate this information, share it with people as much as possible, as you've always done, such that so many people out there receive this information and they make use of it. So I wanted to just quickly share with you that, so that we can have a question and answer session, which will take us a couple of minutes, and then we can close the session of today. Otherwise, thank you so much, Gloria, for extensively sharing with us. And now I'm opening the session for any questions, any experience sharing. In case you have any experience you want to share with us, this is the time. And we are opening the microphone as usual. Just put up your hand and then we can be able to give you the rights to open your microphone. Thank you so much. And let me now hear from you as you ask Gloria the questions that may come. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. In the meantime, could Gloria give us that last page with the QR code so that we can scan and give some response? Thank you very much.
Let me do that in a second.
All right, Gloria, maybe I can give some bit of questions from the chat. I saw some questions in the chat as you share the QR code. There are some questions in the chat. Maybe you could visit and then you check the questions and provide responses. Over to you for now for the QR code. You had something to speak about it.
So in the chat, let me scroll and see. Okay, the question. Okay. Someone's Swipe said, what of schools that are posting pupils and students on TikTok while dancing to promote their institutions? Unless the parent, the school has consent of the parents to post the children on TikTok, what they're doing is not allowed. It's unlawful. And if maybe a parent or a pupil is affected, they can always report to PDPO. Then someone asked, what happens to institutions like Baby's Home that post juvenile in the name of soliciting money for their needs? It's very unlawful to post babies without the consent of their children. There are various ways someone can post children without, they can hide their faces, they can blur out their faces. We don't need to see a face of a child or a baby for us to be able to help them. That's beyond the principle of minimality. That's oversharing and that's unlawful. Then someone said institutions are using content or data without people's consent. If anyone is affected, any institution that is processing their data without their consent, like I had earlier said, they can always report to PDPO. and we'll be able to investigate and continue and prosecute those people. Yes, I think that's all the questions I see in the chat.
Thank you,
I don't see any
Gloria.
other questions.
Thank you, Gloria. So, colleagues, we can also scan the QR code provided there to be able to provide feedback to the Data Protection Office in regards to the training we've had this afternoon. You can just take a screen. You can scan the QR code and then provide that feedback. Let us see who has a question, just in case you want to speak, you want to give us an experience, you want to share with us. Let me see if there are any hands. It could also be an experience of your data being misused or something of the sort, or you reporting someone with a case, or maybe you have another kind of a question you want to put across. We shall be glad to receive it, and we shall be glad to give you a response. There is some question in the chat that some loan apps request and collect data. I think Gloria will pick that question and be able to respond to it. But also I can see more questions in the chat. Maybe you could also pick those two other questions that have come in the chat and respond to them. Thank you, and over to you, Gloria.
Thank you very much. So I see a question that says, minute. Okay, the question I see in the chat says that what happens where entities supposed to enforce the data protection laws are the ones breaking this law? Where do I report them? So, like I said, we regulate individuals, bodies. Bodies include even government bodies. We regulate them when it comes to data protection. You can report them to PDPO. Recently, we had a decision where a person went to NERA to get information of third parties, and NERA denied them access to that information. So they went ahead and made a complaint with the office saying that NERA refused to give them information, yet they needed the information to go ahead and report someone who was doing fraud on some land. But NERA's argument was that if you want access to information, it should be your information, not a third party's information. If you want to get third party information, NERA needs consent of those third parties to give you information. So the office, in conclusion, said that NERA was right to refuse giving access of information of third parties to that person, because the right to access is in person. You can't go and access someone else's information without their consent, unless you are police, you're doing an investigation. Even when you want to go ahead and prosecute someone, private prosecution, you don't need an individual. You can go through police, get a court order to get information. So in that case, if you know an organization is actually misusing your information, you can report them to the Data Protection Office. Then Dennis says that some loan apps request and collect personal information from clients in order to process loan applications, yet they later reject the applications. Is this conduct compliant with the data protection policy? So most of the complaints, some of the complaints that we actually get as an office are from are against loan apps, where, for example, you find that when you log into an app and then they are requesting for access to your photos, access to your gallery, access to your contacts, and blindly, because most times as people, you're in need, you're desperate, so you don't even take time to see how that could actually affect you in the long run. Or maybe to even look at the policy, at the privacy notice on the website of that loan app to see what are the consequences in case I share my information. And then even beyond rejection of the application, sometimes you find that when you fail to pay, they will contact people in your phone book, they'll share pictures, they'll share your information on TikTok, which is unlawful. Those people can as well also come and report when it comes to information to share with loan applications. Then someone says, I don't know if your office is engaging stakeholders on data protection. Many of us are ignorant about data protection. So the data protection office has been around for almost, I think, 5 years, and we do awareness sessions for people on request. We also do radio drives to teach people about data protection. We have our social media channels. When you go to Instagram, we go to our Twitter or X. When you go to YouTube, we have a lot of information, recorded information when it comes to data protection. If you go to YouTube and look for personal data protection office, you're able to see all the trainings we've done, all the information is there. Definitely, like we said, compliance is a journey, and even awareness is a journey. You can't talk up one day and everyone is aware, but that's the goal. Our vision is to have a Uganda where data protection is understood and practiced by all. Someone says they can't access the QR code. That was maybe, did I share that, or do you need me to reshare again? Then someone said, someone was responding. Those are the questions that I see in the chat. And maybe something that I didn't mention that is very important in media is usually media people who maybe share a story in public interest. And as much as public interest is a good ground for you to share, it doesn't override privacy. Yeah, you have to balance that. When you're sharing still information, you're maintaining people's privacy. Unless there are any other questions, I'll maybe mute and maybe someone else can ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria, for those answers. I can see that colleagues, some of you are failing to scan the QR code. Well, I think we can find a way of how to get the tool and you're able to fill in if you are failing to scan it. I understand that sometimes we may also not be having QR scanners on our phones, but we shall find a way of sharing the tool. Maybe you can be able to fill in if it comes as a link or something like that. So colleagues, let me know if there is anyone else who has a question. If there is anyone who has a submission you want to make, let me just see your hand before I can invite Henry to... Okay, Gloria is going to just reshare the QR on the screen. Since we are not going to have any other presentations, she's just going to put the QR on the screen, and then you can be able to scan it. Shirabo, your hand is up. Let me just see.
Okay, thank you, Bernard.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Gloria, for the presentation. Mine is just a submission. So today some people came to my home. They said they are collecting national IDs of village mates, and then they are taking them to the chairperson's place for registration. You know, this ongoing voter register update, something like that, what they are preparing for the village elections. So these people had a bundle of national IDs. They say, for us, we shall take your ID. You don't need to leave your home. I was like, these people are taking my national ID. I don't know where they are taking it. When they reach there, what they are going to use it for. I refused to give it to them. I told them, I'm going to come, bring my national ID myself and register. So I was like, people are still ignorant. Someone just comes to your home, asks for your national ID. They say they are taking it to register you, and you freely give it to them. And then you say, my national ID or my data is safe. And then I was like, there is a really serious need of sensitization of people, especially those in villages. They really don't know how important their national IDs are. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene, for that. I mean, that is the reason why we're actually sharing with you, such that you can be able to support your communities in ensuring that people get this information. I am really sad to learn that that is still happening at this kind of time, where people can be defrauded that way, or people's data can just be taken like that, and people are not aware. And now that you have a microphone in your radio station, you guys have a lot of following in your socials. Please let us endeavor that our people get this information and they are helped. Otherwise, those IDs can be used for other malicious issues. So let us empower our communities, and that's why we really need to appreciate Personal Data Protection Office for this kind of engagements with you, the media, so that you can cascade this information to your people out there. I really want to thank you for sharing with us that experience. It's quite sad, but yeah, we need to encourage our people. We train them, we teach them, and we have these sessions on our socials, on our radios, on our TVs, and we write articles around them. Thank you, Irene, for sharing. Person who has any submission, I'll be glad to give you a microphone if you have anything you want to share.
The code for evaluation has been shared in the chat, so people can go ahead and click the link and go ahead and give the evaluation.
All right, thank you. There is in the chat there is a link. It's a SurveyMonkey link. Please note that it's not the registration link. This is the link for feedback about the session of the day. It has been shared in there by Anita. So please pick it and fill it in. Let me just see if there's anyone else. Okay, so I don't see any other hands. I cannot see any other questions in the chat. I am going to request us now to... Yes, Evelyn? Evelyn, your hand is up. Please go on and share.
Thank you so much, Bernard. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Mine is about those people who shares their IDs while going for a loan. Someone who is looking for the loan in a certain circle or in a certain microfinance bank, those small things, then they ask for a national ID. And you find someone giving the national ID there to get a loan. So those people, such kind of people, really, how are we going to handle them? You find that someone is giving out to his or her personal identification card. At the end of the day, when they have paid even and demanding for their national IDs back, someone tells them that we lost it. In such scenario, how can we handle it?
Thank you, Evelyn. I don't know whether Gloria, you would love to respond to what she has asked, what Evelyn has been talking about, IDs versus loans. So how are we going to support our people? I think it's about awareness creation and ensuring that people understand the legal perspectives of this. But I know that our guest could be in better position to give us maybe a better answer to that. Gloria, would you like to respond to that?
So what I heard from the question was that people who ask for national IDs when you're getting your loan, maybe on an app. So even for the money lender, they want to be aware to know who they are giving their information. You have to have that security. But then now it's going to be, do you want to get the money or do you rather keep your information private? And then someone else said actually in the chat that when you're withdrawing money from an agent, they require your national ID. That's for security purposes, I believe. And it would be a bad thing maybe if they were keeping that ID, but if they maybe verify your identity and give it back to you, that's security on their end. So it shouldn't be seen as because now imagine it would also be very detrimental to a person if you went to maybe withdraw money and then maybe someone has someone maybe impersonates you to come and withdraw money from your account. So I believe for a national ID, it's a safety measure for the person who's giving you money also. Maybe the problem is now when they misuse that information. Yes. The purpose of collecting information, collecting the national ID, ideally is for them to get to know your identity. Are you a Ugandan? How can they find you in case you don't pay back the money? But then when it comes to them misusing and maybe sharing your NIN number or your ID on TikTok, that's where the misuse comes in. So that's the why when they are sharing that information, that is beyond the purpose for why they collected that information. So anything beyond the purpose is unlawful. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gloria. All right, so colleagues, lastly, let us listen to Buseku. Swipe, I saw your hand up, so that we now come to the end of the session. Buseku? Swipe, are you still having your hand up, or you've been answered? Okay, I think Busiku, I can't see him again. All right, so meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, the registration link has been also shared in the chat. As usual, we shall have to register. Yes, yes, please.
Yes, my quick question was on, I've been on several, within the personal data, I've seen several times whenever I'm on the barrier by they're coming to give a report of the deceased, and they mention what the illness. I don't know how that thing is, whereby they keep on mentioning the deceased, the illness which caused the death of the deceased. Then also I've seen times where postmortems have been, and police coming up to give such reports in the public on the postmortem. I don't know how that is. And also lastly, last I've also seen whereby you find that with photographers, they are taking photos of people, but when they find that the function is done and they fail to access those people, they are pinning those photos within their studios, and also some are it's therefore that they fail to access this person well on that. We find that may not have, I may be at the function or maybe in the conference, but I'm not interested in your photo. Or you take me a photo, but and I don't get to notify of it. Then for you, after me failing to pay your photo, you find me hotels where and so on. I don't know how that thing is.
Thank you, Swipe. I think you raise a very interesting question about the funerals, and then also about the meetings. You're in a meeting and someone is taking photographs and they print them, etc. Gloria will be able to respond to those two, and then as we come closer to the end of the session, Gloria, please come and respond to Busiku.
Thank you very much. So when it comes to meetings, usually if you're in a meeting, and usually there are those attendance lists that are passed or to register. So if there's going to be someone to take pictures, the form should have a box where someone consents to their picture being taken or not. So where someone isn't consenting to having that picture being taken, it should not be taken. That's one of the measures that can be done where you have an attendance list. There's someone's name, there's someone's email address, and then add a dialog box for consent for pictures to be taken. And maybe also you can include why you're taking those pictures and where that to end up. So someone can make an informed decision whether they want their pictures to be taken or not. Then I think he also talked about something to do with police reports. Police reports about maybe a postmortem report. I believe that comes under their role, as maybe where someone dies and they're investigating and they have to give a report. So those details are going to be there. They don't give us the entire report of what happened. They just give us what is necessary for them to continue doing their work. And I think you talked about photographers who pin people's photographs. What I gathered from in the studios, that's not allowed. When I come to your studio to take pictures, I've not allowed you to. I've paid you. I've commissioned you to take pictures that are going to be my pictures. It didn't give you the right to go ahead and post me elsewhere or even pin me on your wall before I consent to that. Yes. That's my position. That's the position on that on photographs and meetings.
Thank you, Gloria. Now there's a question. I don't know how you'd respond to it. When we go for funerals, and they have to read the eulogy of somebody, so they're telling us how the guy had this disease of this age, his children, etc. So I think that was also another question that Busiko had raised earlier. I don't know from the perspective of DPPO, what comment do you give on that? How rightful is that? Is it okay? Is it not okay? Because I've grown knowing that at the burial of anybody, the eulogy has to be read, and those are the provisions that we have in those reports at the funeral. So what is your take on that when it comes to sharing this information at the funeral right of somebody?
Okay. So when it comes to funerals and the eulogy reading, the number of children the deceased had, and that information. So the test is, what's the purpose of this information? Why do they have to share the children or the property of the deceased? If there's a purpose to it, for instance, if someone can prove that this information is maybe for accountability purposes, well, but if it's a lot of personal information, I don't think that's advisable for it to be shared by everyone. But I think usually why people share that information is for accountability. So people don't come back and maybe come to claim that it's of the deceased, yet there was information that was already out there and the like.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, one more last question from the chat. A colleague has a relative who had planned to travel abroad for this labor export, and the company took her passport and have since refused to return it to her because she changed her mind on traveling. So I think she was processing, and then time came, she gave up, she didn't want to go now. And the company has refused to give her back her travel documents. So one is wondering whether that is lawful or not, and how should the family proceed with that kind of case?
So the company took the passport and refused to return the passport, even if the person changed their minds. A passport has someone's personal information, and that's not lawful. It's very unlawful, and they can report to the office because their personal data has been obtained unlawfully without their consent. So they can go ahead and report, and maybe look through if they had maybe a contract with the company, what was there, but bottom line, that's unlawful.
Thank you, Gloria. So now, Gloria, the colleagues are really appreciating you. I can see in the chat overwhelmingly thanking you for sharing with us, and of course your entire team. There is a concern that I saw somewhere, someone asking if I'm a university student and then I found my exam maybe being used to pack chapati, can I sue the university for sharing my paper with someone else who's using it to pack the chapati in my exam? How do you respond to that?
In this case, the liable party is the university, because it's the university that holds your information, sit your exams, and keep the scripts. So the university has to explain how do those scripts get to the street.
Thank you, Gloria. Well, so colleagues, I can see that you're requesting that we share the evaluation forms in our WhatsApp groups. You don't need to worry. One is already asking for the presentations. Don't worry, as we have always done, we shall share with you the presentation. As we have always done, after the session, your coordinators will be able to receive all this information and share with you so that you are able to use it on your programs. We shall keep receiving stories relating to data protection, also articles that you've put up, but also your audios that you've put across, such that we are able to keep consolidating and providing those who will be able to get their awards. The awards for the previous sessions are getting ready, and then we shall also have awards for sessions on data protection. So keep them coming through Asha, and we shall be able to announce the day when people will be awarded for data protection, but also for safer internet. So thank you so much, colleagues, for sacrificing your time to join this conversation. And thank you for always sharing this information with your communities. We are really honored, and we are glad that we kept seeing your posts, your TikTok, your WhatsApp, and all that. We've been able to see all that. We want to appreciate you, and we want to wish you the best of the weekend as it comes through. Tomorrow we are not going to meet. We shall communicate the next meeting. And we have, of course, more coming on consumer justice, but also winding up the series on data protection. So we shall keep you updated in your WhatsApp groups, your regional groups, but also through your coordinators. I want to really thank you, and I want to request Mr. Chimera to come in and close the session. I'm assuming that each one of us has now registered, so that we don't complain after. So Henry, over to you. Please give us the closing remarks and we end the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bernard, for the moderation. And I would like to thank all our participants, the Media League by Consent family. You are amazing. And also now I would like to thank our partners. You recall that the ED of Personal Data Protection was at the opening, and we also had Mr. Thieno. Now we have had Gloria. We want to thank you very much, and all the team at the PDPO office. Thank you for the partnership that we are having, and we look forward to continued partnership as we wind up the last session coming in next week. So, colleagues, learning never stops. And as we continue learning, our role at the Consumer Center is to make sure that issues that affect consumers are shared with you, and we empower you as the fourth estate. You're the ears, the eyes, the voice, and the mouth for society. So keep it up. And I would very much love to see another surprise that comes in as a guide on the data protection. I was very surprised to see one of you developing a guide on safer internet. Now I hope we will receive another guide by a journalist on data protection, and we'll be passing it on to the PDPO for them to, let's say, validate and see how it is used. So I was very, very impressed. So, and not only with that guide, but with all the articles, the YouTube, the audios that you are generating out of this. You are amazing, because this is where we need to play a major role, protecting consumers, but also empowering them to live a responsible and improved quality of life. So with all that, I would like to thank you once again. Keep on bringing others on board. So next week, I would expect many more of you to join in, and we conclude our personal data protection series. This is the second. We are going to have the third that will conclude the whole process. So colleagues, I would like to thank you from all your regions, the Western, Northern, Eastern, Central, and Southern. So I would like to thank you very much. Keep on empowering the consumers and safeguarding them to the last mile. Any function you are at and you speak about these issues, please come up with a video clip that we would love to continuously localize and ground the issues. And I liked what Irene shared. Please go in and inform the people that you shouldn't randomly share their national IDs. On that note, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank the DPO for the partnership. I would like to thank you, the media, for the partnership. And I would like to thank my colleagues at Consent for continuously working tirelessly to sensitize the nation. Thank you very much. All the best.